Welcome to another one on factoring polynomials. This time we're factoring trinomials where a equals 1. That'll make sense here in a moment. Our goal is to find the factors of a trinomial where the leading coefficient is 1. That's our A. Let's get started. Let's review what is a trinomial. A trinomial is a polynomial that has 3 terms. Okay. In this case, this is a quadratic polynomial because the leading term has a degree of 2. It's the highest degree here. And we're going to be working primarily with these for our practice and our sample problems. Now, when we talk about factoring a quadratic, this is like our generic form, standard form for a quadratic trinomial, where A, B, and C are all, well, they're generally all real numbers. But for us, they're going to be integers. We're going to be using integers. Okay? And the ones we're going to use, A equals 1, so we can just kind of scribble that out, right? So when we factor it, if we remember from grouping, we can turn this quadratic, we can write it as a product of 2 binomials. We're going to have x plus some number r and plus some number s, where r, if we do FOIL, let's FOIL this out. I'm going to have x squared plus x times s plus x times r plus r times s. Let's rearrange these middle terms. I have x squared plus x times r plus s plus r times s, where b equals r plus s, and c equals r times s. And this is going to become important. We're going to be looking for factors that have a particular relationship. Try this again. So here's our first sample problem, x squared plus 12x plus 32. If I was going to reflect this as the standard form of a quadratic trinomial, a is 1, b is 12, and c is 32. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write an x. We're going to use this to organize our information. Above our x, in the top portion, I have a times c. Well, this is just r. For us, this is, c is r times s, and a equals 1 for this. So the number here is going to be 32. In the bottom, I'm looking for b, and b in this case is positive 12. Remember, this is r plus s. So r and s are my factors. I'm looking for 2 numbers, r and s, that when I multiply them together, I get 32. And when I add these 2 numbers together, I get 12. So what I'm going to start doing is listing factors of 32. Well, 2 times 16 is 32. What else? 4 times 8 is 32. And I think that's really it here. Because I don't need to go any further. If I multiply 2 times 16, I get 32. So that is good. But if I add them together, I get 18. So I can't use those, right? I'm looking for 12. Well, 4 times 8 is 32. When I add them together, I get 12. So when I factor this out, remember, this is supposed to look like 2 binomials where I have x plus some factor times x plus another factor. So in this case, my factors are 4 and 8. And if we're not sure, we want to double check to make sure this works, I'll just use FOIL, right, when I distribute these and multiply them together. So first, x times x is x squared. Outside, x times 8 is 8x. Inside, 4 times x is 4x. Last, 4 times 8 is 32. Combine like terms, and I have x squared plus 12x plus 32. So this was our answer. So we have a new trinomial, n squared minus 12n, or 12 times n, plus 32. So this is a little trickier. I have a negative symbol here and a positive symbol here. That gives me a clue about my factors. We'll go over this in just a second here. Let me erase those. So a equals 1, b equals negative 12, c equals 32 again. So A times C is just 32. B is negative 12. So now I'm looking for two numbers that when I multiply them together, I get 32. And when I add them together, I get negative 12. So that tells me something particular. How can I get a positive number when I multiply two numbers together? Either both of these numbers are positive or both of them are negative. Well, which is it? Let's look at B as our clue. If B is negative, I'm adding them together. So if I multiply them, they're positive, but when I add them together, they're negative. That means R and S are both negative numbers. So what are two negative numbers that when I multiply them together, I get 32 positive? Add them together, I get negative 12. Well, negative 2 times negative 16 is 32. What about negative 4 times negative 8? Well, if we remember from our previous example, we don't need to go any further. Okay, negative 4 times negative 8, that's 32. That checks out. Negative 4 plus negative 8, that's negative 12. So we have our two factors. So our answer is n minus 4 times n minus 8. These are the two factors, the two binomials that when I multiply them together, I get n squared minus 12n plus 32. Another sample problem, x squared minus 7 times x minus 30. So in this case, my middle term, b is negative 7, but my constant, c, is also negative. Okay, a equals 1, b equals negative 7, c equals negative 30. So a times c is negative 30. 1 times negative 30 is negative 30. B is negative 7. So now I'm looking for two factors, r and s. Then when I multiply them together, I get negative 30. When I add them together, I get negative 7. The only way to get a negative number as a product is when one of my factors is negative and one of my factors is positive. So what we're going to do is we're going to list factors of 30. So let's go 2 and 15. All right, so let's make the 2 negative. But real quick, our sum is negative 7. That means our factor that's negative has to be the number value, the absolute value, is larger. So what I'm going to do is figure out how to get my eraser to work. What's happening here? Okay. Let's do a negative there. Let's see. Positive 3, negative 10. Positive 5, negative 6. And those are all the factors we have for now that I'm going to worry about. So positive 2 times negative 15, that's negative 30. But if I add them together, my answer is going to be negative 13. Well, that's not what we want. 3 times negative 10, that's negative 30. And when I add them together, I get negative 7. Bingo. These are our two factors. I'm not going to even look at 5 and negative 6 because I know I don't need to. So when I factor this as two binomials, I have x plus 3, because this is a positive factor, times x minus 10, because this is a negative factor. And these are the two binomials that can be written as a product. Two binomials multiplied together that give me this product here. Last sample problem, you might see something like these. 3 times x squared plus 3 times x minus 18. Well, I said that this section, this lesson here, is where a is supposed to equal 1, but it doesn't. A equals 3, b equals 3, c equals negative 18. The first thing I would ask myself is there a way that I can factor this 3 out of every term? And if you look, the greatest common factor between all of these is 3. So what would happen if I factored a 3 out of all of these? I get 3 times x squared plus x minus 6. And so now all I have to do is factor this trinomial, where a equals 1, b equals 1, c equals negative 6. So a times c is negative 6. Remember, those are our two factors multiplied together. And b equals positive 1. That's the sum of our two factors. So if the sum is positive, that means whatever the factor is that's positive, the absolute value of that factor has to be larger than the absolute value of the negative factor. So the factors of -6 are 1 and -1 and +6, -2, +3, and then -3, +2, and then -6, +1. Well, all of these are factors, so I'm not going to bother multiplying them, but -1 plus 6 is 5. That's not what we're looking for. -2 plus 3 is 1. That's what we're looking for. We're done. These are my two factors. So when I rewrite this, I have to remember that I factored out a 3 to begin with, so I need to rewrite it. And my two factors are x minus 2 for my -2 here, times x plus 3 for my +3 here. Final answer. So what we're doing is we are just writing our trinomials as a product of two binomials. Okay, and sometimes our factors will be negative and sometimes they'll be positive, but we're just getting this trinomial to look like a product here, a multiplication between two binomials. All of our coefficients, our leading coefficient is going to be 1 for all our examples. If it's not, you should be able to factor it out like we did in the last example. Our assignment, if you're one of my students, is going to be the worksheet called Factoring Trinomials A = 1. It's a fancy title. Hope this has been helpful. I apologize for the length. If you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. Good luck.